On the show and in this segment, we've been tracking a rapid rise in progressive Christians as these charlatans hold glitter masses.
And let us confess our faith today in the words of the Sparkle Creed. I believe in the non-binary God, whose pronouns are plural.
Beyonce masses.
I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving.
Y'all, I'm out of breath because we sang Beyonce in church.
And other pagan celebrations of the self. If you want to know the real problem with progressive Christianity, it is that there's nothing Christian about it. You could call yourself a million different things, but just don't call yourself Christian. Progressives hold to a postmodern view of reality and don't follow the law of non-contradiction. Therefore, they're constantly making fools of themselves as they try to hold to biblical ideas while also holding to very liberal postmodern ideas. They throw out anything in the Bible they don't like and by all means bend over backwards, sometimes literally, to make room for homosexual Christianity. In other words, if you can be out of step with the Bible, historic Christianity, and logic, you'll fit right in with progressive Christians and progressive churches. Perhaps the most egregious thing with these people just doing their thing is that they, like all bullies, prey upon the ignorance of other well-meaning people, authentic Christians who just don't know enough about progressives to call them on their crap. Those who fall quickly for the Jesus was all about love and don't push back because they're usually met with definitions like love is love and a woman is a person who feels like a woman, they lose interest quickly and walk away from the kind of progressive Christians peddling their nonsense and don't really dig down deep enough to realize how ridiculous it is. But that kind of incoherence and redefinition of basic words and meanings is kind of par for the course for progressives, and they're probably after trying to disorient people. And that certainly seems to be what they're doing in a new documentary on Christian nationalism. Rob Reiner, no progressive Christian, but one who utilizes the useful idiots of the progressive movement, just created a new documentary called God and Country, The Rise of Christian Nationalism. Here's the trailer.
America and Christianity are like baseball and apple pie, and we celebrate them together.
I was 16, 17 years old when I became a Christian.
I'm an evangelical minister.
I've been a Christian my whole life.
I'm a Christian nationalist. I have nothing to be ashamed of because that's what most Americans are.
Is Christian nationalism Christian? No, it isn't.
We should be blazing forth as a countercultural example, and instead, we're leading the charge of malice and division.
Christian nationalism uses Christianity as a means to an end, that end being some form of authoritarianism.
Being a Christian is about the values of inclusion. Christian nationalism is certainly not based on the values of the gospel.
God wants America to be saved.
They're told over and over and over again that you're in danger.
You need to fight if you don't want to lose your country.
We are in a civil war between good and evil.
This is not a movement about Christian values. This is about Christian power.
What happens to the people who don't believe this stuff?
We are on the precipice.
God is on our side.
We're taking our nation back.
Maybe, if you're watching this, maybe you recognized the face of, or listening, the voice of Phil Vischer there. Now, if this work is anything like his past work, this documentary should be utterly hilarious. And I would be laughing if it weren't so ridiculous. There's a couple of problems with the continuing rise in claims to Christian nationalism being a problem in America, and I want to point out some of them for you now. And if you end up watching this film, I want to encourage you to be looking for them. And the first problem is this, is that the left and liberals rarely define what they mean by Christian nationalism. Now, I will try to do it for you here, since I will not get any help from them. But based upon their claims, I think they mean one of two things. On the extreme, they mean a group of people who want to develop a theocratic nation that makes room only for Christians, and we're going to mass deport everybody who refuses to be a Christian in the country. And so only Christians will be allowed in America. Now, of course, the number of people who actually believe that are some total of zero, basically, in America. But they probably more generally just believe something like this, that Christians think, Christian nationalists anyway, think that their ideas and their morals should shape this nation. And this is a secular nation, and we shouldn't allow Christians to influence this country because of separation of church and state and all of that. Well, here's a major problem within thinking that we are a secular nation that avoids religious ideas at all costs. First of all, not only is that historically illiterate, because that was not true from the beginning of our founding, but also it doesn't really justify why we should allow secularists and secular humanists to have their way with the nation. Why should their version of the nation shape America? Now, please don't argue that secularists don't have their own version of reality and their own version of morality that they want to use to try to shape this nation. They're the only impartial ones, and Christians just aren't. Forgive me for not believing total nonsense. It is true that we all have a bias. We all have an axe to grind, if you want to say. We all have a desire for this nation. That's why this nation really wasn't a secular nation to begin with. It was a pluralistic nation where the best ideas should win. So the idea of eliminating Christianity from the public square is nothing more than a secular agenda to try to shape this nation in their image. And I don't see why we should allow those people to shape this nation according to their image while we are told that we can't shape it according to ours. Now, the second thing is this, is that they also, when they finally do get down to defining what they mean by Christian nationalism, whether it is deporting people who aren't Christians or shaping this nation according to Christian principles, which obviously it was done to begin with, the reason they don't really get down to really defining that is because when they do, they'll find that in either of the two cases, it largely doesn't exist. The vast majority of Christians have enjoyed the fact that they make up the majority and therefore are basically oblivious to what's going on in the nation around them. I have to spend hours of my show each week trying to convince Christians to engage in the culture war so that they will actually take the future of our nation very seriously as a tool that can help people come to know God, but also more importantly, as a tool that can help the livelihood and the well-being of people, which as Christians I would think we would care about. So needless to say, by and large, what the left believes Christian nationalism does not exist. And now I will do one step further for those people who want to argue about whether or not Christian nationalism is a threat, and I'll actually provide some evidence for you that they never care to do. And I'll show you a Pew Research poll that looked at a group of people and asked them the following questions. First and foremost, they asked, is America a Christian nation? Now, 60% of people said that it was. That's the majority of the people polled. 60% said that America was originally a Christian nation. And then they asked, should America continue to be a Christian nation still? And 51%, so a slimmer majority, but a majority nonetheless, said that America was and America is still a Christian nation and should remain a Christian nation. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean mass deportations? Does that mean making sure that everybody thinks just like Christians? Well, let's hear what these people had to say according to this poll. Now, 83% said judges should not bring their own biases into major cases. 77% said churches should not endorse a candidate, and 67% said churches should stay out of political matters altogether. So by and large, the majority of people polled here said America is a Christian nation and it should remain a Christian nation. And then they went on to say, but that does not mean that we are influencing who the candidates are or who Supreme Court justices are simply from a Christian perspective. So even they didn't want that to happen. Now, I will argue the opposite again, that I think that Christians should be allowed on the Supreme Court. And I think the most qualified people should be there regardless of if they're Christians or not. I think churches should be willing to not necessarily endorse a particular candidate, but that simply comes from the fact that the vast majority of our candidates just really don't really live up to the kind of scrutiny that the church should have for a candidate. But I think we should be speaking about candidates in the church and those people who are running for political office. And we should be warning churches against people who hold basically non-Christian views, such as the murder of babies, which should be pretty non-controversial thing, but because of how secular our nation is, of course it isn't. Now, I could go on and just say, simply put, regardless of my interpretation of things or not, the poll here suggests that the vast majority of people don't want anything like what these people claim Christian nationalists want. So here's, I think, really what is at stake at the end of the day. The left wants to influence culture with their religion, which is the religion of secular humanism. And we are not a secular culture and have never been. We are a culture that makes room for secular people, but the separation of church and state does not mean that religious ideas have no place in the public square or in the political realm. So I hope it doesn't take too much justification, but as I've said before, there is religious ideas in the public square and in political circles. They just happen to be non-Christian. So the fact that you're isolating Christianity as one of those ideas that should not be allowed in the public square means that just frankly, you're a bigot. And the point of all of this, and maybe the biggest point that I want to try to leave you with is this, is that all this leads to the conclusion that these individuals, because Christian nationalism, at least in the sense that they think it exists, doesn't exist. It means that they're really after something different. Now, I can't speak for Rob Reiner because I just think he's a loony leftist. But what about those supposed Christians, those progressive Christians that are on this documentary who want to do their best to try to undermine Christians who actually believe that they should make the world a better place and Christianity is the best way to do that? Those Christians like Phil Vischer, what are they really after at the end of the day? Well, I think they're after two things. One, they're after envy because they have not changed the world by and large and made a real difference. And Christians right now who are fighting the culture war, who are protecting babies from abortion and who are protecting small children from gender clinics and supposed gender-affirming care, which is really mutilating care, those Christians are actually really deeply effective in ways that Christians in the past just absolutely were not. And I think that those who are decrying Christian nationalism are really just envious of the difference that real Christians are making that they were never able to make. And then the other thing that I think they're after is, and I think this probably will get wide agreement, is they're after relevance. They love the adulation that the left gives them every time they agree with them. The strange unity that these Christians find with people who basically hate Christianity and everything that it stands for should give them a sinking sense of unease, but it really doesn't because they love to be loved. They love the likes on social media and the relevance that comes to them when they take these positions that hate on churches and Christians who actually take their faith seriously. Because they're really after themselves at the end of the day and not after the truth. They're after being celebrated rather than after actually making a difference. Guys like Phil Vischer will sell their soul for likes and views and sell the truth in the process. So in this world of lies, truth is forced to fly like a sacred white doe in the woodlands, and only by cunning glimpses will she reveal herself, as in Shakespeare and in other masters of great art, of telling the truth, even though it be covertly and by snatches. That was Herman Melville, by the way. Now, I don't really know what that means, but it sounds cool. And if it does mean anything, I think it means that the truth has always been something you have to squint to see. So don't accept what you hear at face value. It has never come easy, and it won't come easy. It takes effort, it takes work, it takes independent thought, and it takes research, and maybe even, reading. Therefore, don't make it easy for these imposters who are trying to peddle their wares by falling for their simple lies. Think better. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go with God.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.